Hi, and welcome to Ministry Mondays with Meg. I'm Meg. I am Reverend Meg Biddle, and I am the National Coordinator of Ministry Life and the American Baptist Personnel Services. And I currently serve at ABHMS, the American Baptist Home Mission Societies, at the headquarters in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. Um, Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. My guest today is Reverend Dr. Leslie Copeland, and she is the COO of the National Council of Churches. She's also the associate minister at Alford Street in Alexandria, and I am sure she's also an author for Judson Press with her first brand new book getting ready to be released November 30th. And I'm sure she's got other things that she'd like to tell us about herself. So, Leslie, if you wouldn't mind, for those who don't know you, introduce yourself, tell everybody about a little bit about who you are.
Sure. Thank you, Meg. It's great to be here with you today. As you said, I work for the National Council of Churches, of the official title being the National Council of the Churches of Christ in the USA, which is an organization that has 37 member denominations, ranging from American Baptists to Presbyterians to Orthodox churches to peace churches like the Quakers. And we work together on issues in which there's unity, like ending mass incarceration, ending racism, do a lot of advocacy work. And there's a whole theology commission, is actually called a convening table now, the Faith in Order, and also do have the copyright for the New Revised Standard Version, updated edition of the Bible, and have the Christian education convening table the Committee on the Uniform Series, which works on the International Sunday School lessons that some people may or may not be familiar with. So I've worked there. This is my second time working at NCC. I worked there in the early 2000s as well. I also used to be Director of Communications and Development for the DC Baptist Convention, which is affiliated with American Baptist Home Mission Societies and American Baptist Churches. Dr. Hagray was my boss for a little bit before he moved on to do other things. I'm one of the associate ministers. There are many at Alfred Street Baptist Church in Alexandria, which is my home church that does a lot of great ministry and missions work, not only in Alexandria and Virginia and the whole Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, as well as nationally and abroad. So I think that's just a little bit about me. And it's great to be here with you.
Yeah. I mean, thank you for being a part of this, but a little bit about you. I mean, it sounds like you're pretty busy to me.
Yes.
And as I kind of teased, you've got your new book, or your first book, coming out, but you also have the chapter in the Church on Purpose, the Reinventing Discipleship, Community, and Justice.
Yes.
Which, by the way, people, if you haven't read it, you should read it. And I'm just saying, like, as somebody who's been a pastor, and maybe that's the wrong response, it made me giggle a little bit, in good ways. Like, you open this up, let's face it, the church is messy and church leadership sometimes a hot mess, and I'm going, truer words were never spoken kind of thing,
Yes.
Because it doesn't matter if you've been a pastor, whether you are paid, unpaid, if you served in ministry, churches, it's just, you kind of just try to figure out, which hot mess you want to go and be a part of, and go, okay, These are my people. Um, so I love it. I love that it's honest. It's not, it doesn't feel, sometimes, yeah, I know academics and things like that. They're important, but sometimes it just feels so academic that you're like, okay, let's just call it like we see it. And to me, that's calling it, you know, like like you see it. So
Yeah.
I very much appreciate that. So if there are people watching and you haven't read it, you should read it, especially, chapter 3, which
Yes.
is Leslie's chapter. Um, so your first solo book, right, is
Yeah.
coming out November 30th,
Yes.
and it's 24/7 embodying Christ-like leadership,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
so was it this book that got you roped into writing your first one, or is like writing a book something you've always wanted to do?
Um, I feel like I might have said years ago I wanted to write a book. I didn't know what I was talking about. It's kind of like when you accept your call to ministry and you're like, oh my goodness, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. But I'd actually done a workshop on Christian leadership. And Adam Bond was at that workshop and asked me to turn that lecture that I did into a chapter for the book, which was just such a blessing. And so as I was writing the chapter, I kind of thought this could really be a book. And then obviously I didn't do that. That was a few years ago. I think that was published in 2015, if I'm not mistaken, or somewhere around there. Uh, right. It's so like the COVID vortex of time, like time
Right.
just sort of
No
has,
kidding.
it's like we've
2015,
lost
you're right.
time and then we've gained some time. So in any case, during COVID, I was watching honestly some of what I felt like was a lack of leadership played out on just such a broad, not only national, but international scale. And I just felt honestly really vexed in my spirit. Like, this cannot be. And some of the people who claim to be, and I'm not saying that they're not Christians, but who, purport their faith and their belief in Christianity and Christ, seem to be the ones who were vexing me the most. And certainly saying and doing things that I at least felt like put people in harm's way. And so it really just kind of pricked my spirit, like to revisit the chapter and to revisit this whole idea of what it means to be a Christian leader, specifically a Christ-like leader, and not just a leader. Like, what makes a difference? Like, if we say that we're Christians and that we are disciples, followers of Christ, what is the difference in our leadership? How does that look? What does that feel like? How do people receive it? So I really just kind of delved into, tried to look into, in a really honest way. I felt myself many times, and I say this in the book, I would almost be apologetic, like, well, I'm not talking about perfection. I'm talking about, our goals, because I didn't want to be, and I still, to your point about we're a hot mess, like we are, we have faults, we all miss it sometimes. So I didn't want to be condemning, but I also felt like I needed to, through the book, really push us to do better in some cases, and at least to be thinking about how we can do better, how we can represent Christ more in the world and in our spheres and places of influence.
But don't you think that sometimes we really, need to be condemning to go, this kind of behavior is not okay from people who are claiming to be Christians?
Yes. And there's a part in there that the editors, let me just give a shout out to the editors, like Judson, Rachel, and
Yeah.
Cheryl. There were some parts where I felt like even when I reread it, I'm sure Meg, like you write something and then you go and you rewrite and you're like, whoa, what was I thinking? And so there were some parts that I, kind of went in on people who I feel like do need to be rebuked, right? To use that language. And yeah, and I think that was part of the reason, part of the drive, I think, to really just get this out into the world, because as you know, there's a lot of talk right now even about Christian nationalism, and there are people who I feel like are misrepresenting our faith in ways that are really harmful to other people, and certainly they don't draw people to Christ. So I feel like I'm a justice advocate and I'm an evangelist at heart. And so, when I see stuff like that, I like lose sleep over it. I'm really mad. I'm wanting to, yell at people, scream at people. Not that I do it, but sometimes people are a hot mess, it's like, you can do better than this,
Right.
and now is a moment for us to be doing better.
I agree. And I think you summed up pretty well what a lot of us feel like. We feel like we've been screaming for so long, we're not those people. We don't feel like that. We don't love like that. That's not love.
Right.
That's quite the that's quite the opposite. God is not conditional. God, God is loving all God's people, not just what fits in a box, or that kind of thing. And you really get tired of yelling. But in one of these conversations that I've had with someone, and when I remember who it is, I will give them credit. But and it may have been Ryan Burge, but who wrote Nuns, said that when you get tired of yelling, start explaining instead. And so maybe that's why you write books like these, because it's time for someone to explain.
Amen. I like that.
I do too. Really liked it. And so I look forward to reading the book, and I could probably cheat and I might have to go have a conversation with a JP person, because and get a sneak peek. But in one of your introductions, or it was an about you or something like that, I'm not sure, they listed you as a transformed nonconformist. Can you say a little bit about that? Because I love it.
So this comes out of a book by Reverend Adam Taylor. He is the head executive director, it may be chief CEO of Sojourners. And his first book, oh my goodness, was about hope, advocating hope. I think I'm getting
Is that Mobilizing Hope?
Mobilizing Hope. I know
Okay.
it had, Mobilizing Hope. And in that, he talks about people who are transformed nonconformists. And I was one of the people, I was honored to be one of the people listed as a transformed nonconformist. So what he's talking about is, people who really, as a justice advocate, first of all, I believe in transformation. And I believe that transformation, at least part of it, is speaking out against injustice in our world. And so, yeah, I love that. I loved it when he did it, and I still love it. I think it's a really neat way to talk about how Christians can engage in the world and how we are supposed to show up in public spaces for other people, for the most vulnerable. And I know that this is part of my calling, but I believe it's part of our calling as a Christian community to show up in those spaces and speak life and justice and righteousness for people for ourselves and for others. And I'm known to be out on the street at a rally, and I've done civil disobedience, So I guess that's the nonconformist part of it.
I think it's a wonderful, if somebody's going to give you a label, what a great one to have, really. I mean, we spend a lot of times labeling people and things like that, but I could see how that would definitely be an honor. I mean, oh, come on.
Yeah. And I would say, I know this isn't about mobilizing hope in the book, but I do think
that's okay.
Just shout out to Adam. And if you haven't read it, I think it is a good book, because I do feel like there is a lot of self-centeredness in our society, and mobilizing hope and really looking at how we live in community, beloved community even, together is something that we should be doing as Christians and as a faith community.
And is that sort of like a summation of what your book is about? 24/7 embodying Christ-like leadership. I mean,
yeah, and it is. And it's also, you will know, one of the things that and I'm sure you've heard and seen and experienced, is that sometimes people who are the loudest about being Christians can also be terrible when they're leading other people. I say that in love, but some people are just, they can be mean, they can be cruel, they can be impatient. And so I have moments when I can be impatient. I'm generally not mean or cruel, but I can be impatient. So again, I'm not talking about perfection, but what I am talking about is when we say that we're transformed, there's something that should be different about when we are Christians who are leading, whether we're at church or if we have a corporate job or if we, are whatever space that we're in a nonprofit, volunteer, whatever space that we're in, when we are leading, there ought to be something about us, about how we lead, about how we care for people, that shows that we're not just reading off, what Fortune or Business Week said or whatever other, space that talks about leadership, but that there's a Christ-like way in which we engage with people and with our world that separates us and sets us apart, and really in some ways is evangelism without being evangelism, is discipleship without being discipleship, so that really is kind of the crux of it, that when we're Christians and we say that we're leaders and we're occupying space as leaders, that we should really be striving to embody what it means to be Christ-like in those spaces.
I think one of the biggest honors people can give those of us who serve in ministries in various ways is when they say things like, "You seem like a real person," you just seem normal, good, I don't intend to, come in with the swords blazing, things like that. And I'm not going to overthrow the tables, although, there have been times where that seemed like a good idea. But I think for them to just get that leaders are human, and like you said, you can get frustrated with people, but not cruel,
right?
And
not abusive,
and definitely not abusive.
But we do know those people who are not maybe they have their own work to do or whatever the case may be. And so what I try to really drive the point home is that I'm really not talking about us being perfect or not having a bad moment or not needing growth ourselves, because I mean, that's part of the process is that we're all growing. But what I'm talking about is being intentional about our faith in a way that it shows up in our leadership.
Yeah. And that's perfect. Your doctoral thesis, In the Public Eye and in Harm's Way.
Yes.
So that is a clergywoman's viewpoint of domestic violence, like a partner, right? Is that that's what we're talking about in that?
Well, I studied clergy women's experience of domestic violence as people who are in the public eye, but yet oftentimes don't have the space to even be vulnerable in that kind of way. Like that there's a way in which we talked about fishbowl a little bit, but that when you're a clergy woman, when you're dealing with an abusive relationship, it really does, there needs to be different kinds of support than maybe other people. So that was really, that was my hypothesis. And yeah, that was the focus of the thesis.
I think you write about things that people need to read, that it has purpose. And that's what I like. I mean, I know we haven't met in person yet, but you'll be at Space for Grace, so we'll get to see you there. But I mean, that's what I love about you, is that authentic and genuine, and it seems to be information that is relevant, is not just information for information's sake. Some people write books to write books. You write books with purpose, and I appreciate that.
Thank you. It was definitely a labor of love that I feel like I was called to write it. So I know that might sound strange, but I kept trying to figure out some other topic to do for my thesis, but that one just kept really drawing me in. And if I write another book, which I may, there's some parts of that I would like to expand upon, and not just for clergy women, but just in general, because I do feel like, there's some things that we do really, really well as church, as faith community, and then there are other things that we don't do so well. And I feel like that is one of the things when we talk about abuse and violence, domestic violence, that's an area that we need to be pushed a bit to do better, as hard as it is. But,
do you think some of that is just because people don't know how to help?
Yeah, I think some of it is people don't know how to help. Definitely. I think some of it is denial, which we are good at sometimes in the church. It's hard for us to admit some of the harder things. But I think that's where, that's what we have to do in ministry, that there are some things that are hard, that are not black and white, to use that phraseology as an example, that there's a lot of gray and there's a lot of shades of gray, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't lean into it. And when people are dying, it seems to me that the church should be, in particular, on the front lines, and that is definitely an area that we know even from COVID, the upticks in violence, not only in homes but in our communities. This is a place where the church needs to be, and so So yeah, I that, which is why I feel like it's a calling, because I'm like, can I get an easy topic? Like,
Right.
can I write
Right.
something
Right.
like, I dream about writing a sitcom with a pastor, a woman pastor, the other side of the pulpit, or something along those lines. Just because I know a lot of women pastors who have the most hilarious experiences. People would not believe some of the things you would know, Meg,
I
but people
would.
would not believe
I could lend
some
you a
of the
few
crazy
stories.
things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm not saying crazy things don't happen to male pastors. So that's not my point. But I know for women pastors and women in ministry, craziest kinds of things happen. But there's a lot of work for us to do as a faith community, as faith communities, and as churches. And I feel like for us to hide away from those isn't. I mean, that's not who God calls us to be.
So, what's something that you want people to know about you? Like, there's a what question do you wish I would have asked? Is there
Oh my
something
goodness.
like, ooh, I wish you would have asked me that so I could tell them this thing?
I don't know if there's something I wish you'd ask. What else do I want people to know
I don't
about me?
know, sports team, an animal,
Oh,
something.
so
Okay, we could
I'm
talk
a
about that.
basketball fanatic. I love basketball, but I'm super competitive. So I will shut down if my team like loses. I'll turn the channel. My sister actually played through college, and she, like, if her team loses, she, like, you don't even want to talk to her.
Okay.
And a funny thing, my son is actually a lot like her. But I love, especially so. My team, honestly, is the Knicks, which is, it's painful. But I also watch. I live in the DMV, so I also watch the Wizards, the Washington Wizards, and I love college basketball. So I went to Syracuse undergrad. I went to, this is a fun fact. Syracuse undergrad. Went to Duke for Divinity School. I did an MBA at Maryland. And 2001, Duke won the NCAA championship. 2002, Maryland won the NCAA championship. 2003, Syracuse won. Carmelo Anthony. So I felt like God was loving up on me.
There you go. No, see, these are great things to know.
It's a great thing to know. Then
They
I love
are great things
soccer
to know.
because my kids played soccer, and I just got hooked on it. And my daughter played 1 year in college, and so we go play soccer, go watch soccer a lot now.
Okay.
Yeah, so I guess those are fun. Those are fun things, and I love the beach. But you're going to come to that.
Right, right. Everybody needs to come, whether they watch this video before, after, we'll record it. But yes, I'm coming. So, and I'm looking forward to meeting you in person. So, my last question is the joy question. We talked about, we know you're a sports fan,
Yes.
and but what brings you joy in the things that you do? Pastor, author, mom, soccer,
Yeah.
what brings you joy in your life?
Um, so I do have to shout out my children. I have two now young adult children. They do bring me joy. They keep me grounded, and they keep me up to speed on their generation, and a lot of things that I would totally miss if it weren't for them. They also are just a reminder to me of God's grace. They really are a gift, and both of them are justice minded. When I have, from the time they were little, they were with me at rallies. At one point, they're like, "What rally are we going to this weekend, Mom?" And so it just something, it got in their system, and they're both Christians. They go to church. I know a lot of people in their generation don't necessarily, but they go, they're happy about going to church. They feel like they're connoisseurs of church because they've been in so many different types of churches with having me as a mom. And so they bring me joy. I shared with you, I recently had a death in my family, and my whole family, extended family, was able to get together, and that was joyous. I mean, shout out to the Dunbar Walker family. I really do get a lot of joy from the generations, and how we get along, and then sometimes don't always get along, but it's always there's a lot of love that is in my Dunbar Walker family. And then the beach gives me joy, because I think everybody should have time at the beach and just watch the waves go in and out, and walk on the sand and just marvel in the beauty of God's creation. And the beach is just one place that I love to go, that always reminds me that God is a creator as well, is the creator. And I get a lot of joy from being at the beach.
This might be the best answer yet that I've had to this question. So I appreciate it very much that you've come from all angles and you've included a little bit of everybody. So shout out to Dr. Leslie's family, and wonderful supporters, and your people, your people. So, for those that are watching, one, thank you for watching. You can catch Ministry Mondays with Meg on Mondays, usually at 11, on Facebook, Judson Press, ABHMS Facebook page, YouTube. You can find us. We're around. Or you can just Google us, Ministry Mondays with Meg, and up will pop. And you can watch this episode over and over and share it with your friends, whatever. But for those of you who are watching and coming to Space for Grace, make sure you look for Dr. Leslie and say hello and be like, "Hey, I saw you on." And we'll see what we can do to, make you Baptist famous, and get her books. New book, 24/7, Embodying Christ-like Leadership, coming out November 30th. And that will be on Judson Press, and I'm sure you'll be able to find it on other sites.
You can pre-order, I believe. Also.
Oh, we can pre-order. Awesome. I do like pre-ordering. It's fun to be able to get it first. So make sure you support Dr. Leslie and her endeavors, and go and read that Church on Purpose. That's also a great book, and you can get it, I'm sure, on Amazon, but at Judson Press as well. So all of that being said, thank you, Reverend Dr. Leslie Copeland, for your time. And I am grateful for you and your gifts in ministry, and keep doing the good work. And thank you.
Thank you, Meg. This has been great. I'm really glad to be with you.
I'm so glad. I'm glad. Thank you.